actually does, right? And I think Facebook does some things very, very well. I think it does other things very poorly. And one of the things it does very poorly is socializing. Okay, when what is social about an email? For that matter, what's social about an IM? There are varying degrees of answers to those questions, and I don't presume to be able to answer them right now. People have dedicated their entire lives of research to those kinds of questions. So we'll tackle maybe some of that some other time in the Wringer, but for right now, it's important to understand at least that I think if we're very honest and we look to what Facebook does, it's to the very far end of what we would consider socializing. In other words, its social networking quotient is huge. Its socializing quotient is very, very small. What you can actually accomplish in terms of being able to maintain a social network of friends, I think, is much less real, and much more virtual, obviously, than anything that we've ever had before. I am not one of those people that has thousands of friends. I think that's a joke. I'm very selective with the folks that I add. But that being said, even with the selectivity that I have, I think there is always, you have to understand what you're trying to do. I've never been trying to amass a giant database of people that I've met before once in my life. I cannot tell you, and so many of you have probably had this phenomenon, where you've met someone, or you forget that you've met someone, but you've been at a party and two people meet each other for the very first time, and then they find out that they're actually friends on Facebook. You guys ever experienced that? Because I know I have. And it's one of those things where you just scratch your head like, why did you add this person if you didn't even know who the heck they were, right? What does your social network really do? In other words, there's no socializing going on there. It's just basically a click to have somebody in that network, and then, it never gets used. It just sits as a dormant entry in a database somewhere, right? And to me, that's worthless. It's worthless. And that's not to say social networking is worthless. It's not. And I'm not sitting here and saying that socializing has to have the premium here as well. Folks, all of you know me in part because we are virtually connected in some way, and I don't mean to, allude back to the introduction to this video, but it's true, right? I mean, you guys came to this site in one way or another. You found us for one reason or another. Many of you came from other sites or other videos or affiliates, whatever the case might be. And now, you have an element of connection with me, but how many of you know, could really, say that you know me fairly well? Or even worse, I could turn back and say, hey, I know you guys very well because we've had a lot of social interaction. We haven't, right? And so there's a little bit of a wall there, right? And I think that wall is maintained by Facebook and by social networking because it kind of interferes with that socializing element. But if you notice, the folks that are coming up now, like in Google Chrome, and like how Facebook is trying to evolve itself utilizing Skype, which that announcement came very recently as well, is they're trying to break down those social barriers, the social stigma of being attached to a social networking site. And I understand exactly why, because as Cato points out, there is a big difference between social networking and socializing. We've done nothing, despite our best efforts with our technology, to really be able to connect more people together in a kind of social way beyond accessibility. The social networking sites really help to do very specific kind of niche purposes. And then if we go to connect with somebody, we take that offline. Facebook never becomes the primary means of us kind of keeping up with those that are the most important socialized interactions in our world. Not to say you don't keep up with your family. I definitely do myself. But my point is, you can spend a lot of time. I think one of the things that Facebook does very well, and social networking in general, is it helps you keep up with people from different parts of your life. I have people that I haven't seen in many, many years, and it helps me kind of understand what's going on with them. Do I ever click on their pages just to go see and like creep on? Oh, I wonder what's going on this week with this person I went to high school with. No, I don't do that. But if they put something on a feed, I go, oh, look at that. That's great. This person's saying something. That's funny. I like that. Or, hey, I hope you're doing well. It's great to see you. That kind of renders the high school reunion like completely useless now. Why spend the money? And when I found that out at my 10th year reunion. The point is, it's, I think it does that very well. But I think in terms of helping us socialize, it does very little. And I think that's a great point. And so those were the big contributions I want to talk about. It sounds to me like some of you are definitely entrenched in Facebook, and you want it no other way. It's that it does what it's supposed to do. You might even have gripes and complaints about it, but you're very happy with it. It is what it is. No problem there, right? I think that that many of you are also hinting at there being something beyond what Facebook does well. And I think that there are a lot of possibilities there. And maybe the idea of social networking and socializing, and those being diametrically opposed, might hold the key to that puzzle. And I think Google's probably trying their best to utilize that as a central tenet of investment for Google Plus moving forward. I also have to say this, and some of you talked about it. I think Sonic Rose mentioned it. I think a couple of you mentioned this. So one of the reasons I really liked Facebook over MySpace, and why the transition to that was so much easier, was because Facebook just had this kind of streamlined user interface for the time. It was very quick. It was very easy. You just kind of click something, and then you go, oh my God, look at this. They know these people that I probably know, and I knew all of them, and it was just a very crazy kind of thing. It's almost the ghost in the machine at that point. That's mesmerizing. But I think if we're all going to be honest with ourselves, and we're all going to think about this a lot, the interface of Facebook is horrendously clunky. It's written very poorly from a software design standpoint. Doing anything that has any kind of real significance is not an easy thing to do. Adding pictures, sure, add pictures, no problem. Click here, click here, click here. Now, if I only want to share those pictures with this person, this person, this person, and nobody else in the world should be able to see them, it becomes this massive undertaking, right? And it almost becomes to the point where I'm not going to put anything on Facebook unless I know very well that everybody in the world is potentially going to be able to see it. That's a scary thought, guys, but it's absolutely true. Think about all that personal data on the PlayStation Network that got hacked. What if that happened to something like Facebook? God forbid. But there's a lot of information about you, and you don't have to get into all the kinds of information that kicked off maybe some rather seedy conversations on this week's comment posting. But some people are putting very personal information up there, and I think if you'd be very upset if those kinds of things got out. And so it becomes the point where, because the interface is so clunky, and because it's very difficult to really have ultimate control over what happens and who sees what, and you just kind of click the button and hope that that's the case, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and I've seen that happen, by the way. Oh, who wants to deal with that? I know I don't. So I just end up not putting that stuff on Facebook and trying to find other ways to share it. And that becomes, that kind of outmodes the idea of Facebook. And I need something else to satisfy the needs of really being able to share some of that stuff. And I just did some Google Plus experimentation this week, just kind of throwing a lot of stuff on there just to see how it would handle that stuff. And I have to say, I'm very impressed. They have that in mind right from the beginning. It's these people should be able to see this stuff, and everything else you're going to have ultimate control over who sees what and how that stuff gets shared and so on and so forth. And I think they've really got the right things at heart moving forward. Doesn't mean Google Plus is going to win this battle, and it certainly doesn't mean that Google Plus is what's next. I'm just saying it points maybe to some of the things that you guys were hinting at in terms of there being the next Facebook, the next connection out there. I think it's very clear, though. Video is a part of all of it. That's something that we've talked about in the past. Video is something that helps to maintain, or I'm sorry, it it helps to maintain the quotient of socializing while reducing that social networking quotient. So you can still have a lot of people that you touch, and a lot of people can see your videos or things like that, or you can actually chat through video and have a real connection. And I think that's a great thing, and I think that's going to be really the future of the internet and the network, is really being able to sustain all this video, no matter where you are. So many of you probably have devices, iPads, iPhones, Android devices, what have you, that actually have forward-facing cameras that now you could use on the run. If you're out at a mobile hotspot, you can plop it on and have a conversation with somebody right there. I was in a Starbucks the other day. Someone had headphones on right in front of their iPad, and they were having a conversation as if they were on the phone, but they were absolutely in a video conversation right on their iPad. I thought that's a great thing. That's clearly going to be part of the future, and it's very clear that anybody serious about social networking moving forward is going to have that as a central tenet. That being said, what I think Facebook does very poorly is be able to segment your life in ways that you would like to keep them segmented. So there are plenty of things that I want to be able to run kind of as my work network, my professional network. Then there's, on the other hand, this other side of things where I want to have a network of people that I know very, very well. And I want to keep them in the loop with everything that's going on with me, whether it happens to be work-related. And some of those people might be, might float around in the same networks, right? And I want to be able to connect some of those things together. So it ends up being this kind of giant Venn diagram of these big circles that kind of interconnect. And just thinking about it now, maybe Google Plus has really influenced my thinking on that. And maybe I haven't thought it through very well. But the point is, it's all kind of connected in ways that I want to be able to keep certain things segmented. There are some people at work, or let's put it this way, like let's say you go to school. If there's some folks that you go to school with that are going to be very, very, that you're very interested in having be a part of your everyday life. There are some people that you go to school with that you know very well, but you're not interested in them having them kind of be a part of it. Well, on Facebook, you could make a couple different groups, a group here, a group here, and then you have to set kind of the draconian rules of how this group sees these things and this group. But it becomes, again, this giant undertaking, and I'll be quite honest with you, I've never fully gotten my head around how to do all that stuff. But if there was a simpler way where I could just say, hey, here's a group of people, and I'll just say it, here's a circle, I'm trying to avoid it. Here's a circle of people that I do work with that are very close to me, and here's a circle of people that I work with that are not very close to me, and here's a circle of people with that I go to off-site events from work or whatever the case. You see what I'm saying? You can make those circles fairly easily, and setting up those rules just makes a lot more sense. And I think there is something to that being beyond the Facebook experience. So the clunkiness of it, it really gets in the way, and I think there is a certain degree. I love the idea of the unified interface. Okay, everybody's interface looks exactly the same. That's one of the things that differentiated Facebook from MySpace. But that being said, there are pieces of this puzzle that become humdrum because there's a lack of customization, and I think Facebook might be up against that wall right now too. What if I want to do something a little bit different within certain constraints of what is available for customization, right? And I'm not just talking about my profile picture or whatever the case might be. I just think it's a really interesting concept, and I think there's a lot to be gleaned from that, and I think there are a lot of different ways that can really take off into the future. So a great conversation to have anyway. So I'll give you my answer. I've kind of been skirting around it for a little while, and I'll go ahead and give you my answer to this. And my answer is that I kind of am ready to move beyond Facebook. I think Facebook is ridiculously good at keeping us connected in that college mentality. I think Facebook is really good at helping us do some of those niche things we've already talked about. But I think it's so bad at doing other things that the internet and the capabilities therein have really eclipsed the usefulness of Facebook as a tool. And I'm very interested to see what's next. Because, am I ready to bail like I did on MySpace? No, I don't think I'm ready to bail yet, but I'm absolutely ready to see what the next thing is, because I'm a little tired of Facebook, and I'm a little tired about the cult of Facebook, and one of the things that I think is important to talk about, guys, is that we're potentially facing a social networking bubble on Wall Street. I don't know if any of you know about